Thank you. Can we go on to Lady Barker's question?
Thank you very much. You both used a very interesting phrase about organisations understanding their place in the funding ecology, and I think as a very big, significant funder, one of a few, we're trying to understand your place. And we're doing so in a context of significant change. Last week we talked to small charities about the disappearance of the CVS network on whom they depended for advice. This afternoon we were talking to Google and Twitter about expanding digital skills. I'm not sure, I haven't heard, I mean, you've said lots of things, but I haven't heard how much of your resources goes on infrastructure and skills development, and that would be interesting to know. And as one of the bigger funders, what input do you put into the charitable sector to build that resilience so that they can deliver the programmes that you decide and roll out and approve of in discussion with government?
I can't give you a precise figure on how much funding of infrastructure bodies today, but we can certainly try and come back to you, and we could certainly give you some numbers around supporting capability development, because we've got some very particular programmes, so perhaps we could come back on that particularly. I wanted to start by actually talking a little bit about infrastructure and what infrastructure might mean in the future, because I think it might be we might be looking at different models. Some of you may be familiar with Exeter CVS's recent opening of something called the Exeter CoLab, which is a fascinating experiment, I suppose, where they have taken over more of a building in Exeter, and they're now hosting up to 25 different agencies, both public and voluntary sector. And what their philosophy is trying to do is to say, actually, all these agencies quite often operate in their own silos, and their beneficiaries, people, have to become cogs in their wheels. And I think what they're trying to do by doing this is saying, actually, it's the person who is the wheel, and we all need to be the cogs in their wheel in trying to help them and support them as they change their lives. Now, I think that's a very interesting development for an organisation that is an infrastructure body. I think we heard the tail end of the previous folk talking about the digital world. I think that the notion of digital platforms as infrastructure, and this is some of the stuff that sort of Go On UK has perhaps looked at, and Dot Everyone as its successor body, I think we will see new types of infrastructure develop. I think that it may be that some infrastructure are actually practitioner organisations. Citizens UK is perhaps an infrastructure body for the future, because it's actually trying to train and enable folk to be community organisers. So I think the whole notion of what an infrastructure body is changing, and our interest, mainly through our Accelerating Ideas programme, which is in our UK programme, is to try to support some of those ideas, to provide them with funding, to live with potential failure, because actually things need to not always work, because that's how we all learn, and to enable perhaps some civil society organisations to take some of those risks in a way that perhaps funders, and I would include us in that category, haven't always been as encouraging as we might around that nature of risk-taking. So I think that picture is changing quite considerably.